So last night I went through a little container that I had set aside actually over a year ago at this point with the parts from Gallinuva, Holly, and Maku from 2003. And at the time when I had set it aside, I had the thought that I was going to be building some kind of Rahi out of it, some combination model. Well, I revisited that idea yesterday, ended up building something completely different from what I intended, still a Rahi, and it became what I officially would consider my 201st Rahi that I've ever designed. It's been a long journey, but this video, I wanted to talk about a bit of a story. I'm calling this one I Was Destined to Build Rahi, or something along those lines. And though I'm, of course, using that title a little bit tongue-in-cheek, I have a bit of a story. So, my love for Bionicle stems all the way into my childhood, deeply into my childhood. And that means, I was going to elementary school with friends who were taking Bionicles to school as well. And we were playing with them on the playground and sharing them on the bus and absolutely, having parts of ours get lost. But in this, I remember specifically, I have a question. Do you remember Scholastic book fairs? If you were in the US, I imagine they had them probably all over, but at the very least here in Missouri, we had them. And they were honestly a pretty fun little event. I think we had them a few times a year, honestly, maybe even like a few months. I don't remember the exact specifics of it, but I do remember one event specifically, and I think it was in third grade, but I could be wrong. All I remember, second grade maybe? Who cares? Point is, all I remember is that, we had a day where our class, our elementary school class, got to go to the book fair and kind of check out all of the new stuff. They'd set it up in the library and we'd be able to go in there and you could buy books, you could check out books, you could, look at them, read them. You could sit down and play games, you could grab like paper mazes and dot-to-dots and logic puzzles and math puzzles and whatever you wanted to do, even little like trinket toys, right? And each of these things, except for the papers, of course, cost like a few dollars, right? A handful of cents for a lot of the small toy pieces, like a quarter a piece, whatever. Well, anyway, in this, there was also a small event where you had to guess the amount of seashells in a fishbowl. You see, it was ocean themed this year. And so I went in there. I didn't have enough money to buy any books by any means, but I did have, a couple of quarters on me. I ended up getting a small little transparent blue little shark toy thing. I don't know whatever happened to that. And I took a guess on this fishbowl. So we get back to our class, and honestly, I remember it being close to either like a cycle break or the end of the year. It was very laid back this day. I do remember that. And so I remember leaning back in my chair, just like feet up on the desk. I was the coolest kid, and no, I wasn't, but I don't know why. It's not something I normally do. I'm a very reserved, very kind of spatially aware person. I like to be small. I like to take up as little space as possible. But that day, I'm sitting there leaning back, arms behind my head and everything. And then suddenly an announcement comes on. It's toward the end of the day at this point. And I hear over the intercom my name get called, saying that I had won this guess. Not just had I won it, because the idea was to get close, right? But I guessed the exact number. 1,216. That's a very arbitrary number. Why the hell did I pick that? Here's the thing. If you've been around on the channel, you know my birthday is on November 15th. I celebrated it on the channel when I hit 1,000 subscribers. It was honestly a really beautiful time. I don't know why, but I decided I would take that number, 11 and 15, and add 1 to each of those numbers. Why? No idea. 1115 is just as arbitrary as 1216, but I guessed 1216 anyway. Hit the nail on the head. So I remember shooting up from my chair, no joke, when they called my name and then said the exact number that it was. My teacher just glanced at me like, what? Like, dude, what? So they said, whenever, classes are dismissed, come down to the office or whatever, and you can collect your prize. And my teacher's like, just go, right? It's, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 minutes before the end of school at this point. So I head down there, and the first thing they do is they pull me into the office. Like, okay, so sit down for a moment. Which, yeah, like, fair enough. I'd be the same way, too. They're like, okay, so we have to know. How did you guess the number? And I told them. I just took my birthday and added 1. What? They're like, okay, that makes sense. Here's your prize. It's a little certificate that says, like, you get $10. It was just a $10 little thing. but $10 back in the late 90s. I guess it would have been early 2000s at this point. Long story short, they said, okay, here's your prize. You can go on down to the book fair. It's going to be open after school for about a half an hour or an hour, something along those lines. Gives people time if they didn't get to go in the daytime to actually visit them, right? And so I went down there and I picked out two Bionicle books specifically. I picked out the very first book, which I think is like Quest for the Masks or Tales of the Masks, something along those lines. It's been a while, but it's just Tahu Mata surfing on his little lava board over the lava. Same exact cover art as is on his canister. And the second book that I picked up, which I tore to pieces, I loved it so much, was the Rahi Beasts book. I don't know why I picked that one specifically. I've always loved Rahi for all intents and purposes. And I talked yesterday in the video how 2003 was kind of a fundamental change for Bionicle in a lot of ways, specifically with like Makuta being built very different from Titans or whatever you want to call the box sets that came before him. And so when I looked through this book, I knew, obviously a lot of this stuff is designed by fans of Bionicle. Some of them probably even designed by Bionicle like designers in their off time as well, I'm sure. And obviously the aesthetic on a lot of these Rahi was different, but there were a handful in there that I loved so much. And it's funny because that book it was like my Bible, like really was. I took that thing with me everywhere, well past elementary school into middle school. I used to throw out my book bag when I'd be bored just so I could stare at something at lunch. And I loved it. And it's funny because I talk about how when I was young, I didn't really build a lot of Rahi, not for lack of trying, of course. I mocked all the time, but I could never mock something I was truly like happy with. There were a couple things that I made back in the day that I think were pretty good and even hold up today. But most of, I think, what I mocked back in those days were either really static figures, if I was building animals at all, which I basically never was, or, offshoots of humanoid characters. Okay, I have a Toa character. Let's rebuild that Toa character slightly. I have this character, and basically just creating my own characters, which is fun in its own right. But it was never as ambitious as building Rahi. And the reason I never tried was because I thought, I don't have that ability. Well, yeah. Nobody innately has the ability to do good. You have to practice. You have to try. You have to get out of your own comfort zone, get out of your own way sometimes, and challenge your own beliefs, because I wouldn't be where I am today if I had never done that. And I am going to repeat a little bit of a story here as well, but I've talked about what really started my journey into creating Rahi truly, like actually delving time into it. And there is a member of the Bionicle community who I had followed for a long time. I need to catch up with them, honestly. And they had also built Rahi in the past that were really classically inspired. I loved them so much. They went by when I knew them, Loganto or Ganto, something along those lines. And they built phenomenal classic Rahi. I believe their handle online now is Limini Lipid, but it may have changed. I don't remember. Aurora is another one. All the same person, but all fantastic creators. And I watched their evolution from creating different types of like animal Rahis. And I was like, man, I wish I could do what they do. And now I am kind of doing it in a way, sort of taking the torch, if you will. Not because they don't do it anymore. I think what they do now is something that they're, I would hope, very happy with. But I wouldn't be where I am today without that sort of kick in the butt of inspiration, and also with my Borak Va challenge. And I've described this in the past before, but the challenge was super simple. It was, again, a way to get myself out of my comfort zone. I know I showed this little Borak Va combiner that I made a lot in videos because it's one I'm super proud of, but basically just taking any two Borak Va, combining them together and making some kind of animal. There were more rules than that for my challenge, but suffice to say, that's all it was. Just two Borak Va, try to make them into an animal that's at least somewhat recognizable. And I did that. I did that as many times as I possibly could, as was possible. I think I created 13 different combination models, with 2 of them being repeats because, 2 of them didn't look so good. So I retried them, tried to make something else out of them. And I watched in real time for the first time my skills improve. And I identified for the first time these barriers that I had taken to heart to such a degree that I never questioned them. And I think that was where it really changed for me. I used to think that you couldn't approach Rahi from any other way than what Lego already had done, so I didn't bother trying. But I never asked myself why I believed that in the first place. And the reason I believed that was because it was the nostalgic thing that I was used to. It was the thing that made me happy because I saw Lego Rahi and I knew they made me happy. So how could I build something on the same scale as that? How could I build something to make myself that level of happy without realizing the fact that building isn't always just about making you happy. Like, you should be thinking about you first. Absolutely. But even if I build something and the design process takes some of the novelty away from that build, which it never has, but this was a fear of mine, for somebody else, it's new to them. You know, when I build this little walrus build over here from the Galak Va and Livak Va sets, to me, it's such a beautiful creation, but I could absolutely see having designed it like, oh, okay, yeah, it's really cool, but, I could do better or something like that. And I don't think that way, but I could see what would lead me to think that way. However, if I handed that build off to somebody else with a Bionicle box or Bionicle instructions or something along those lines and told them to build it, I think they'd really enjoy it because that's what it is. It's special, it's different, but it's along the same lines of what I had enjoyed growing up that I never thought I could do. In a lot of ways, I'm living my own dream. Not a profitable dream by any means, but that's not why I do it. I do it because I love it, and I've always loved it. That has never changed. I don't expect it to. 201 Rahi is an incredible milestone, honestly, and I didn't think I would get here. I didn't think I'd get to 50, 30, 20. I don't know what my expectations were, and I don't know what they are today. I just know that I enjoy what I do to the same degree as I always have, and that hasn't changed. And I've grown comfortable knowing that fact, because it means that I could create Rahi indefinitely and never tire of it. There are occasions that I'll burn out for a month or two, kind of take a few steps back. But at the end of the day, the process, the passion never leaves. I think that's really special. So that's really what this video is about. It's just stories. Sometimes they're all you need. Sometimes what you need to do to break out of your shell, to find yourself, is experiences. And I think if we deny ourselves those experiences, we deny ourselves change. We deny ourselves a metamorphosis. Does that make sense? Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, my name's Skybird. I'd appreciate it if you'd like to subscribe. If you'd like to, you don't have to, but I'd enjoy it if you'd like to. And of course, if you do, it gets us that much closer to 3,000. But if you want to join the conversation, you can do so down below in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. What was your pivotal moment in Bionicle? What is the thing that really either anchored you to the series or shifted your perspective on the series as a whole? And it could be anything. Maybe even your dark ages. We've all had them, right? And of course, if you want to take the conversation further, you can check out the Discord, which is linked down in the description, or Patreon and Instagram, both of which help the channel out tremendously. But of course, I'm just happy you're here, and I hope you enjoy. Take care.